and what we're doing will be different. When we originally proposed this, or Schneider originally looked at doing this for us, we were going to go in the front yards. And the reason we were going in the front yards is that it's a lot easier to maintain long term. We got significant pushback from residents about doing that. Keep in mind that some of them are in the front yards. And so what we've done is gone back to the drawing board with is to design something that would utilize the current location of all the electrical devices, etc. And then also create a looped system where at the ends of each of these blocks, we would loop the electrical system together, so there's some redundancy there. And we also change the phasing, so the legs. So we have a 3-phase. We bring 3-phase in from both ends. Right now, it's only serviced from the Geneva side of River Bluff, or that River Bluff area. We would actually bring it in from the river, so it would be on Geneva and up on the top of the hill, the old bridge by River Bluff. So there's a couple of key element changes that I think improve the design. We anticipate the cost to be easily in the $2 million range once we bid this out, but we are ready to bid it. Those documents are provided through your packet. And our next step, if you approve this, and this is recognized in the CIP, as you probably note, it's at a higher amount. Going back to what we talked about with contingency and make sure we have enough money for each project. And we budgeted $3 million for that project, but I certainly hope that it's not really that high. We do hope to recognize some savings by doing it all at once. But again, those savings are kind of quickly evaporating when we look at the market and what's happening. So we would take that out to bid and give it, the typical time frame for the 8 weeks to bid that out and bring it back to you all for approval. And that project probably wouldn't start right away because there's going to be a lead time on getting some of the equipment that would be needed. But it would start just as soon as possible. I believe what you have in your contract, or what you have in the bid package, is 24 months. So from the time we issued it, we hope to have the project done within 24 months. We'll play that by ear as the market kind of dictates. That's the goal. Any questions about that?
No questions about that. There is something, I think you know what I'm going to talk about, communication. So communication isn't outlined in here, and I think that we need to set some level of expectation on communication, and I think that needs to be included in your bid about how they're going to communicate. This is going to be a major upheaval to the residents of River Bluff. It's a good thing, but it's going to be a major upheaval, and the biggest problems that we've had is not communicating well, letting people know what to expect, and we get tons of calls after.
So we probably need to, rather than ask for that request, we probably need to dictate this is what the expectation would be as part of the bid.
Right.
That part of that would be communication, here's appropriate, that kind of thing. So I'll get with Schneider and see what we can work out.
Right.
Maybe tonight.
Yeah.
I would recommend the vote is approved with caveat that the mayor and the city administrator add a component that deals with communicating with residents, expectations for communication with residents. I think we can trust the mayor to come up with something that's adequate. I will provide the information. I think you will bless something that, you wouldn't bless anything that would be inadequate. Just
About the changes to the system or the way that we're approaching it. All right. Then do I have a motion?
Yes. I make a motion that we authorize Schneider Electric to advertise for bids for construction cost installation on River Bluff subdivision electrical upgrade with an added component that the mayor and city administrator stated
Of communication.
of communication.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. And Sheena, this doesn't mean anything.
So I'm gonna, we'll talk about it briefly. As part of our utility rate discussion that took place in executive session, I did update a little bit on the solar. For purposes of clarity, the city staff for years has been utilizing a formula for figuring out how much we need to pay people when they put electricity back on the system. And what we've been doing is not in keeping with our current ordinance. Our current ordinance states that we will only pay them back basically the bit shy of 4, so it's about 3.039. What we've been paying them back is actually, and I was right, it's, I had time to think about it since the meeting to now. It is, what we're rebating is our full rate. Our full rate's around 11 cents or so. So they're getting, right now, we're basically paying them for every kilowatt hour they put on, back on the system. We pay them 11 on their roofs or elsewhere on their property. They're actually participating in this and getting that rebate. So what we'll try to do is prepare a letter that's tailored to them, to their usage, and gives them an idea of how much we pay back. So I will, just again, no action necessary, just advising you what that means. But I don't think that'll happen tomorrow or even this week. It'll probably be a little bit of time before we get that changed in our system. This will require some changes in code as well, because the way it's set up in there, I believe is incorrect. And well, that's part of the reason we're doing what we're doing.
Did you have a question on the solar?
Just a question. My name is Van Johnson. I live on Living Tranquil Ranch, 112 Sunrise Hill. Let me ask a question about that. I have solar panels. I'm not affected by you, but I have solar panels on my house. Why, if the house is pulling in this, and then they're giving these kilowatts to you of what they're not using, you're selling it to other users to use, and you're selling it at the regular rate, why not give them the same amount of money? It's just a question.
Right.
It sounds like you're robbing them. Their panel brought it in, you're gonna give them 4 cents, but then you're gonna sell it for 12 cents. It sounds crazy.
No, that's not the case. So the cost to deliver power to the residences, there are generation costs, transmission costs, distribution costs. And so basically what we've been paying them as if they are doing all of those costs that are sunk costs to us. So what the idea of the solar is that you basically, the portion, the consumer portion, the portion that gets paid like directly from the citizens of Castroville for having that consumption at that point, that's what they get rebated, not the entire. It's kind of like if you think about employees of a restaurant, they get a discount off of their own food. Well, they don't discount less than it cost them to make the food. They discount it down to the price where it costs them to make the food, including all of those costs, and they just take off the profit. So all we're doing is taking off the profit and giving back, or just giving them back the profit portion of that. So the city is not making the profit off of that. Does that make sense?
We essentially be paying them the same thing we pay to CPS for them.
Right.
Well, and it's not quite that either. I mean, it gets very complex very quickly. We have poles we have to maintain, we have wires we have to maintain, we have people that pay to do that maintenance. And then we also have pass-through charges that come to us through CPS that it doesn't matter if you give us energy or not, we have to pay those. And so, and we have to deliver that electricity to your house, whether you use it or not, or you put some back on us or not. And so that's what this recognizes. And it in a simplified term, when you put it, it's not entirely true. Our profit's not exactly represented by 0.039, but that's a good way of putting it. Basically, we're saying, look, all these other fixed costs we still have, we're going to give you back the portion that is the non-fixed cost that we could give you back. And I think that's probably more accurate.
That's a better statement, yeah.
And you did say for Tranquil Ranch, you already know that you're,
Yeah.
I think the CPS territory?
Yes.
Right, yeah. And so I don't know what their policy is. It's probably similar to what we're talking about tonight, but.
It's just a question I had. I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
they do it, but I was just trying to see.
It's roughly like you're basically, the city's paying you what they pay CPS for the purchase of the power, not the transmission and the maintenance and everything else, which is
Power
fair.
cost only. Yeah, all right, great.
Good discussion. Okay, so next item is discussion and appropriate action on adoption of the 2022 Community Investment Plan, the CIP.
So I don't know how much discussion we want to have on this, because I'm afraid we could spend all night.
Yeah.
The Mayor and I talked about, Mayor and I talked about whether or not we want to have a separate workshop, and I think that will be appropriate, potentially in the future, especially around, I think once we get, unless you want to do it sooner, but after the election, when we get our new council on, right now, it's really basically the same council with the exception of Mr. Shearhart, who will, we'll have to figure out what we'll do there. But, in conjunction with the budget prep, we can have some of that discussion. The goal, and what hopefully I convey in the delivery of the document, is that this is every bit like a budget in the sense that we adopt the budget on October 1st or prior to October 1st, And we have the very first budget amendments like the next week or 2 weeks later, because that's just the way budgets work. There's always something that wasn't contemplated in the budget and it happens pretty quickly. So in the same sense, this CIP is meant to be a living document. For instance, the projects, we know the costs that are there are only rough estimates, and the timeframes are only rough estimates. And as we, for instance, the River Bluff project, I have fixed costs in there, I have timeframes for when those costs will be realized, and as we do the River Bluff project, that's what the reality will be. And it won't be, I can almost guarantee you the numbers are, it'll be something different, higher, lower, sooner, later, it'll be different. What I'm really looking for from council, and I'm not looking for a hard, let's put this in, chisel it in tombstone, but I would like to, some, at least a general agreement that the items that have been identified, the prioritized items and the things that have been funded are in line with what you all are seeking to accomplish from a capital improvement basis. And but I did a play on words in the way that this has been produced, and we're calling it a community investment plan. I'm afraid some people may think that we're talking about how we're gonna invest our revenues. That's not at all what this is, but it is a example of how cities invest in their communities, because there are opportunity costs as there are with anything else, and you can do all kinds of things with this money. But after we had those capital planning retreats and meetings, we came up with a prioritized list. This list is very, very similar, if not almost exactly the same as what I sent to you in maybe August or September of last year. So not much has changed. What I've done is, one, validated some of the numbers with our engineer and put together some plans. The areas where I'm gonna bring back to you for more input, I think in the future, we're really, I'll break it down this way too. From a utility fund standpoint, we've already got a list of priorities, and there's not a lot of flexibility in how we're gonna spend the money on the utility fund side. We're gonna lean heavily on our engineering partners to guide us in where those dollars can be spent, whether it's at the sewer plant or sewer lines or lift stations or water lines, that sort of thing. So from a policy making standpoint, frankly and candidly, I don't expect a lot of input from you all on those items. We have engineers to weigh in on that. On the general fund side, that's where we're probably gonna need your input. And even on the general fund side, since we've already made a commitment to streets, the vast majority of the money that the general fund is borrowed. So we borrowed $5 million, which should carry us through 2 years. At least half of that money we anticipate spending on streets. And we will bring, included in this plan, it's not, it's really supposed to be kind of an appendix to the plan, if you want to think about it that way, is in that streets section. I went ahead and gave you kind of phase 1 and phase 2. That's, you'll see that there's phase 1, there's some rivers, some streets in River Bluff, and then there's Naples, and I'm trying to think of the other street that's highlighted, that's there. And Amelia, our concept there is maybe to partner with the county. We'll see if they can't come in and help us on those streets, and then we would contract out the streets that are River Bluff. One of the big factors that's kind of determining staff's recommendation on which streets are fixed, part of it is the state of the current street, like how bad it is, but part also whether or not there's utilities underneath those streets that also need fixing. And the fact of the matter is that both River Bluff and Country Village, for the most part, the underground utilities are fine. We don't look at the need to have to mess with those very much at all. And the streets themselves are not in very good condition. So they're high targets, if you will, or easy targets for street repair. We do recognize that there are streets throughout Old Town Castroville, if you consider it that way, that need repair, need investment. The challenge with those streets is that the vast majority of them have water and sewer repairs that also need to be conducted. And so we're going to have to be a lot more thoughtful about the timing of when those streets get fixed. The few that you see listed in phase 1 and don't really have a whole lot of utilities underneath them that we can fix, are there. That's the reason we're able to make those repairs. So that's Naples and Amelia. And then the second phase, I believe, the one that's got all the drainage on it, that's on the south side. Athens Street's on it, but obviously Athens is gonna have, we probably have to think about how we're gonna do that as well, because if that's gonna be part of a drainage plan or whatever we're gonna do, we're not gonna wanna just go in and do that street, we're gonna wanna do that in conjunction with the drainage, which is, I think, another part of the reason that's in kind of the second phase of this bond. But the point is, you all are really gonna, as far as being able to provide policy direction, it's really more on the general fund side, and it's gonna be what streets do you wanna do, right? And what kind of, what form does that streets plan take. And certainly, Devin's been putting a lot of thought into this and has some recommendations for us all. And then the secondary to that is how we're gonna spend that parks money and the planning money. We've already made some commitments on the planning side, spend some money on drainage, about $250,000 there. We're gonna spend some money on putting together a GIS system. That's an unknown quantity that'll come forward to you, but that's been plugged in as potential money. We're gonna do UDO, we talked a little bit about that. Again, we haven't committed, but that's the money that I put in there for planning. So really, when you boil it down, there's kind of just a finite amount of money that you all are gonna be able to help me understand how to spend. And I would suggest that it really has to do with parks and streets. Now, the outlier of all of this is downtown redevelopment. I have had some discussion with Josh Kemp, who spoke at the last meeting, about what that would look like. And I think that the way we're gonna treat that is not try to look at the entire downtown initially. He has a timeline he needs to work on. We're trying to get the barbecue joint that he mentioned. He didn't say the name, but he said it's this great barbecue place. So he has a time frame to work in, and what we're gonna try to do is just focus on those 2 blocks, and I'm gonna treat that more like any other development agreement, any other development that we're trying to support, rather than trying to look at it as a downtown, let's look at the whole picture project at this stage. It doesn't mean that we can't look at it in the future, it doesn't mean that it can't be part of a larger process, but for his need and for his time frame, the thing that makes the most sense is what can we do just on that development? And to the extent that we have some money set aside for downtown planning, it's about $250,000 there, that gives me some flexibility when we get to that point and start negotiating with them from a development standpoint, we'll have the ability to do some of that. So that's a little bit of correction, if you will, from the last meeting. Where last meeting we were talking about what can we do, put some numbers together, and let's put a plan together for that whole, that L-shaped Houston to September. The more and more I looked at that, that's not something we wanna rush into. And it's not something they need us to rush into. We certainly don't want their fix to be standalone and not be able to fit into a larger project, and that's something that I think Josh will help us with to a certain extent. But there's also not the need to like I said, consider it all at once. So, just FYI. More to come on downtown development, I'm sure.
That's good. That's good that you're looking at taking the smallest chunk feasible.
It's really, I said 2 blocks, it's really just 1 block, it's just that Paris Street block. And we'll look at the electric and see if that makes sense and feasible, we'll look at water and sewer and see what that's gonna cost and probably get some restrap and some other things. So we'll just look at that as its own product. It's my thought.
And I think that one of the ways that we need to figure out what our time commitment is gonna be on the street and utilities, repair, reconstruct. What all does it cost? Like, basically what utilities are under which streets, what will it take to fix those? I wanna see like a unified plan so that we can understand. Right now it's nebulous. We have utilities under some streets and we have some streets that need to be fixed. I think we need to the best of our knowledge, that will improve with the CIS.
The GIS system.
The GIS system.
And that's certainly what I think we're aiming for, is that the issue for us is going to be the unknown of how much these utility projects are gonna cost us, knowing that we've got all that development that's on its way, and there's gonna be some city participation in some of that on some level. We need to that's part of the unknown, is understanding how those utility dollars are gonna get spent. Because right now, I mean, here's the thing that the city faces, that every city faces. I mean, kudos and congratulations for going out and borrowing money. And kudos and congratulations for starting the CIP process. But, the caveat is, you have $120 million, $200 million worth of projects. We're not borrowing $200 million. We're borrowing, less than 50. So, there's going to be trade-offs. We're not gonna get there. We're gonna have to figure out how there's going to be winners and losers, is all I'm saying. And you're gonna have to choose whose baby's ugly on some level. You're gonna have to say, this is where we're gonna spend our money, this is where we're not. And I will say this, I won't harp on downtown redevelopment, but on the downtown side, one of the great things they have, feather in their cap, or anybody that's looking at doing downtown, is the ROI is very apparent. Whereas the return on investment, when you think about it that way, isn't apparent in any of the other, most of the utility projects are sunk costs. The utility payers, taxpayers don't really benefit. They benefit from more sustainable services and more reliable services, and that's what we all want. But if you had the choice to put your money somewhere that actually had an ROI that affected the taxpayer's pocketbook and reduced their tax burden and that kind of thing, redeveloping any area, and it happens to be downtown right now that we're talking about, but any area where you can make less blighted and more successful, at the end of the day, lowers your costs across the board. So just throwing that out there for now, but that'll be something again we'll talk about in greater detail. So CIP is just, again, the one thing I want you to think of is this is a work in progress. It's not the final product. We will change it. The big issue is have we captured your priorities and have we put them in the time frames that you find to be acceptable?
All right, let's start. See this along the lines, are you seeing any anomalies here?
No?
Okay. Councilman Carroll?
I feel like our work was well represented, thank you.
Councilman King?
No comments.
Okay. Councilman Sherrill?
I agree with Councilman Carey.
Okay. Councilman Dyer?
Well, I'd like to compliment the city administrator. I think this is a great plan. I think it's a tremendous improvement over what we've ever done. And I've been through the details of it. I like the way he's got it laid out. I'm very pleased that it looks out 11 years, the current year plus 10 years. It's gonna allow us as a city council to start putting that vision into words. And then that vision is gonna translate into what the capital improvement plan becomes. And every year, you're gonna have different council members, different ideas, so the plan's gonna change. But at least we're starting to look out beyond our toes. And I think it's a very good start. And I think you've really brought some great ideas for improvements from what we had before.
I think the one thing you'll see change just in future iterations is I'll be adding, I focus a lot on where we're gonna spend our money in the next few years. Because that's what we need to have as a group. But one of the things I think we're gonna be doing more of in the future and relying on some partners to help us with is identifying unfunded items. So, and those will become unfunded depending on your choices. So for instance, when you look at a list of water projects and a list of sewer projects, and we're gonna say, this is how much money we have to spend. So we have $6 million to spend on water and sewer in this year, and here's $28 million worth of stuff. And so everything that goes unfunded, or you don't choose to do, moves into that unfunded category. But that goes back to, I think, what you really desire, Herb, and what you've kind of been pushing for is the ability to see what are our outstanding obligations, what are our liabilities, where do we need to fix things, not just where we're spending money, which is very important, but where are we not spending money that if we were riotous and had all the money in the world, where would we spend it? So that's not, I will just tell you, there's some of that in here, but it's not very much, not as much as I usually have, because we haven't been through the processes yet, we're just starting. But as we go through that year over year, as time passes, you're gonna see more of that included into this plan.
Right. Yeah, great job on this. I really appreciate how you've separated that by funding source as well. That helps us keep a vision on that, and I definitely agree with hitting the next 2 years. That's what's right in front of us. We just need to set up or continue to work on our quantification of the priorities, so that council knows of these, this is the impact of it, so we just need to work on our missions.
I think part of that's gonna be, we'll narrow that down in that retreat that I hope we have in May. And we call it a retreat, but it's not a vacation, it's a workshop we do here, we're not going anywhere else, yeah. So just so you, for full, again, disclosure, once you make this, adopt this, much like the budget brief that was in the consent agenda, we'll put this on the website. The idea is this is a public document, just like the budget, and people can go in and look at it, and they can start to appraise it and give you feedback and that kind of thing. So this is intended to be a public-facing document, which is why you see the first 10 pages are a lot about, well, what is a CIP? How does this work, and how does it get funded, and that kind of thing.
All right, let's just make sure that we double check the description, make sure that there's no question about it. I think we should do a final review just to make sure that everything's very clear on there.
I noticed a couple of clericals, just to highlight it, all back to it.
Yeah, and that, honestly, as I think each one of us can attest to, as you get started understanding what the city finances are, they make a lot of sense now. But as you first start off with it, if you don't have experience with it, if you haven't looked into it, if you haven't really studied it and understand it, it's really kind of hard to understand. It's hard to, yeah, it's quite overwhelming. Even to people that have worked on budgets before, understanding how the buckets work and how, but, from what I've seen so far, you've done a great job of explaining that. I think we just need to take, just a fresh set of eyes and just make sure that there's nothing glaring standing out that we might be able to, fix with just a brief explanation. Right. All right, so do I have a motion on that?
I move we adopt the proposed 2022 community investment plan.
Do I have a second? Okay. Motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Great, thank you, great job, everyone. I know it's got a lot of work on that. All right, next item is staff reports.
So, yeah, I'm just gonna, partly in the interest of time, but if you have any questions, let me know. I do want to speak to a couple of things. So the airport activity report, you may have noticed, has changed a little bit. That's more in keeping with what the mayor has kind of pushed back on. We need to kind of look at the data. So the concept is, obviously, we want to be able to give you some metrics that matter, and be able to give them to you in a way that's pretty easy to digest. So you'll see the very top page, it talks about revenue and fuel sales, and it's comparative in nature. So it tells you, here's how we're doing now compared to last year. And you'll see the numbers are actually pretty good as far as comparison. So everything's up. That's kind of where we want to see things. So one, I want to call attention to that report and just the format that's changed and solicit feedback. And all feedback is good feedback. So any candidate comments you have, and I'm thinking right now, if there's things you want to see in these reports are for you. They're not for us. Staff loves generating them. They'd love them even more if they were useful to you. So to the degree that there's something in it that you find not useful, or you wish you had a little bit more information, if you let me know about that. I'll also tell you that the other reports will also be changing. I've had communication with staff. I'm starting to set some expectations. What we're going to ask them to do is go through a process of defining success. So what does success look like for your department? And then in the same breath, how are you going to measure that? How are you going to hold yourself accountable to that success? So, for the library, for instance, we just had a great library report at the last meeting. She talked about how we compare to the state numbers, and we're phenomenal. If you look at her attendance year over year just for the library, it's not great because COVID and all that. When you look at it on a comparative basis against the library statistics, San Antonio, Hondo, our library is phenomenal. It's really performing very well. So we want to be able to utilize statistics like that, but put it in a monthly basis where we can track how we're doing against ourselves year over year, but put it in that same context, the same format as what the state would require. So what is I believe the format in that report was per capita. What's our per capita attendance and how is that performing? I don't think I have anything else to report in there.
On these reports, for instance, I really like the code enforcement reports, especially where they go into details, but where it says the complaint was filed, could they just add something in what the complaint was? And, because I'd be curious to what some of these, but the fact that they had the listing down there below and then a brief summary of, if that would help me a bunch. I like the finance reports, those are good. The, of course, the library and everything. When you, if you go down to, the parks, on here it's on page 234 of 255 on the printout. There was a financial table there that I don't know what it means.
We lost all the column headers.
Yeah, there's no.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay, I was trying to see there.
And then down below where it says GL debit and GL credit, what's GL?
General ledger, so that's our general fund.
So I don't know, on the top of the next page, there's this thing there and I don't know what it really is saying.
Oh, I see what you're saying, okay.
But I like the little, the summaries, those are good. I'm trying to understand everything that's going on. On your, Blue needs to clean up this little sheet a little bit. Because it says, real simple, with cats. Cats picked up, cats euthanized or died, cats returned, cats adopted. Well, so that, but they don't say the same thing for for dogs.
Right.
And I do have some people that keep after me about this, but we had 4 cats picked up, 2 returned owners, 1 adopted rescue, where'd the other cat go?
Well, it does have the same, it has dogs adopted, released, dogs euthanized, dogs picked up, they're all zeroed. Dogs returned to owners, there's 2.
As in picked up and returned.
Dogs adopted, released, dogs, oh yeah, again, it's not the same order. So there, it doesn't happen on dog, or dogs returned to owners too, but it doesn't say any dogs were picked up, so where'd those 2 owner dogs come from?
Right.
So anyway, and then there were 35 calls, but this list of numbers don't anyway equate to 35. So I'm just a numbers guy.
You know, I think a good way to look at this, the way that we've been approaching this is trying to figure out what metrics matter by department.
Yeah,
So if you get a chance, just, take a couple of hours and grab a report that's important to you and say, this is exactly what I'd like it to say. This is what I'm interested in.
I just like it to be filled out completely.
Yeah.
And I just like it to be filled out correctly. But no, everything else, it really is great.
I will tell you, one of the things that I am going to focus on is comparative numbers, and because just for me, so I want what y'all want, but there is something that I want too. I mean, for me as administrator, it helps to know how are we performing year over year, month over month? How are my resources that the city's allocated to have been allocated to me, how are they being utilized? So, for instance, an activity report like this, which is what we're looking at, really it only has surface value. If it's not comparative in nature, it doesn't tell me, okay, year over year, what does this look like? Month over month, what does this look like? Do I know, was I busier this month or less busy? I don't know, unless I go and pull out the other report and make a comparison. And I don't want to do that. I don't want y'all have to do that. I want that to be done for me. So whether you ask for it or not, one of the improvements, or at least I view as improvements to the reports, will be that they will be more comparative in nature, so that, again, from a policy decision, when you think about resources and resource allocation and activity, you can see where activity is falling off or picking up, that kind of thing, especially as we grow. I know on the animal, one of the things we've heard over and over is that as we grow, we're gonna have more and more animal calls. Well, you won't know that if they only incrementally increase. If this year, month there were 35, next month there were 37, and in 10 months, there were 48. If you aren't sitting there pulling out every report, you may lose sight of that. So, I'm gonna push back a little bit on some of that other stuff, but I don't want to push on blue too much. This is something that I'm looking at all departments to try to do. So. But I am gonna try to narrow it down to a few. I don't want them to have to, we don't have the staff for them to be full-time CPAs, because they're just going in, yeah.
I have on the case detail report for violations and everything, the 2 locations that's been out there, you know which 2 of them? It's still no update, all it says is filed in municipal court.
Well, on the page before.
They're not listed.
One of them
either.
shouldn't be, if it's one I'm thinking of, it isn't in court. So
There's 2 locations,
okay,
one at Hopkinville
right, that one hasn't had any action.
and then the junkyard.
Okay. All right, so if you will email me what your interest is, and then I will.
What their status is.
Right, but just give me the specific address, that way I
Okay.
don't embarrass anybody here. But I will
Yeah.
email not just you, but I'll email the rest of the council what that status is.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Any other questions or comments on the staff report? All right. No?
No, sir.
All right. So our next item is executive
Yeah.
session.
Comment looks like.
Can I make a point real quick?
Yes, please make it quick. We're out.
Yeah, it's going to executive session, just to remind the city that I know it's come to my attention that the illegal sign that's been granted on the residential lot, the city's hands might be tied and might have to stay. Just remember, precedent has been set recently that when a permit has been given, the applicant has a process to go to ZBOA and ask for an adjustment to come into compliance or ask for to be able to keep it there. So there's always that option on the sign.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I apologize. I forgot that we were making sure you got a chance to speak about that, and we will talk about that.
Do you want to do item 11 before we go to executive session?
Because we talked about doing that after.
No action, that's right.
Yeah, we need to remember to come back to 11 after.
Okay, right, next item is executive session. Number one, the city council will meet in closed session under provisions of the Texas Government Code, section 551.071, entitled Consultation with Attorney, to receive legal advice regarding a matter in which the duty of the attorney to the governmental body under the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflicts with chapter 551 of the Government Code to include the following matters. The airport farm lease, dental office sign and zoning matter, utility easements, and Walmart water rights. Number two, pursuant to the Texas Code section 551.074 entitled Personnel Matters and 551.071 Consultation with Attorney, to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee. This is Brian Jackson, Chief of Police. To deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employees, Deborah Howe, City Secretary. To deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, Scott Dixon, City Administrator. We're going to go into an executive session at 9:36.
Live stream's on. We're all.
When they come back on executive
Don't push me down.
whenever they say something, it doesn't matter. It's hard to deal with. If you don't, if you can't. If not, you might be.
Yes, sir.
Or let me run the camera, and I'll run this one, and I'll run I'll keep this on and I'll run that camera. And I'll catch what I need if they say anything.
They might come back in 15 minutes.
I will talk to you later. I will recap for you guys.
All right, guys.
Get it out for you.
So, for all of y'all that are watching,
Go out, guys.
oh, shit.
Hey, show me the YouTube link, guy.
For
I have to leave.
yeah, sure.
Take too long. You guys want to hang, right?
For you guys that are watching, they're in executive session right now, and I'll
Go to the YouTube
here.
link.
Here. Some of the cards. Shit. If you go to that channel right there too, Sheepdog 17.
Sheepdog 17.
Yeah, and you go on there and click on videos live. It'll be streaming.
Okay, so
Yeah.
tonight when they finally come back, but we
When
won't know
they
what
come.
we don't know what really happened because they went into executive session, so they're coming
Right,
back
so they're gonna come out and they're either gonna make a comment,
Mm-hmm.
or they're either gonna take action and fire him,
Mm-hmm.
which is what I hope,
Mm-hmm.
or they're just gonna come out and say nothing,
Mm-hmm.
which they can do at this point, so.
But I noticed they had her name on there, the city secretary, and they had that guy right there, the administrator.
Yeah, and I don't
So it must be
know,
a promotion or something.
yeah, I don't know what, if they have anything to do with the same thing the chief does. I have no idea, I'm looking into it, but, right, it could be a promotion for all we know,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
we're gonna find out. I know KSAT's still, hitting it on one end. I hit it on the other,
Okay.
and follow. Well, I'll tell you real quick. I'm gonna go outside. I'm gonna go outside and have a smoke, guys, while we wait for them to come back in from executive session. I'm gonna go outside and have a smoke. It's gonna be quiet right now.
It'll
Oh,
be
yeah.
easier to get his camera because it's better quality.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're gonna stall out. That's what they're gonna stall out there. They're gonna wait the whole 96 minutes.
All right, guys, so here's the deal. They're in executive session. One of the things they're going to be talking about is the status of the chief. So they could very well come out and say he's fired. They could come out and say nothing. But we'll see. I'm going to go outside and have a smoke. I'm not going to move my camera around because I was having some other issues with a connection. A connection is what was causing the issue. So I'll get that fixed. But for right now, hang tight. Rub one off if you want. I got some good up close shots, so there'll be some good. I don't know how the live stream does on resolution on those shots, but I left my big camera at my house on my counter because my wife wouldn't shut her darn mouth. It's not my fault. All right, guys, where y'all at?
She's a lot braver than I am. That 14,000-foot jump she did.
Oh yeah, she jumped out of an airplane. My wife jumped out of an airplane.
Man, I would have
That's what
passed
Henry
out.
was talking about.
I would have passed out the time we exited the door.
Man, that's pretty high. 14,000 feet. It's high, man.
I have problems handling 10 feet.
Right. It's definitely high. They got a restroom back there?
Yes, they do.
I haven't seen any reason to take my clothes off. I don't see any tyranny going on here right now, but that could change any moment. But no, really, honestly, I don't see any. They've been polite to people. It's been a very boring meeting, talking about just regular city business. I had to come out here early because you just never know when they're gonna discuss what I'm here for. So, and they may come out tonight and they may not say anything about what they discussed concerning the chief, or they may say something. So,
You should go ask him yourself when he leaves the building.
the chief,
Yeah,
the chief is here.
I'm sure he's in executive session with him. He
Well-
probably came in the back door.
You know what he drives? Because there
I
was a
don't
guy
know
in a
exactly
white.
what he drives.
There was a guy in a white SUV.
I'm not gonna tell you exactly what he drives, but
Well, there was a guy in a white SUV sitting out back.
I'm almost positive the dude's there. So now you got a decision.
I wonder if
You
I
don't have
can
one camera.
catch. No, he can catch what's going on the inside. Hang tight, guys. I'm gonna mute this. All right, guys, I'm back. I received a text message letting me know that the police chief is here at the building. The police chief is here at the building. He has not appeared at the city council meeting. But word has it that when he's finished with executive session, he's going to exit out back. And I intend to try to ask him some questions when he comes out. So first I need to use the restroom right quick. So if you guys don't mind, I'm kind of strapped to my equipment. They have it locked. Doggone it, man. Doggone it. Oh well. I was gonna be, oh, you know what? I should get my truck to bring it back here. Well, I don't really have to do that. But one of these vehicles back here is the police chief's vehicle. Now let's see who can guess which vehicle is the chief's vehicle. So we have a Jeep. We have a, doesn't have any, see what kind of stickers it has on this one. This one has a back the blue sticker. That's the only sticker it has. We'll go over here. I don't see any police lights on it. I don't see any police lights on this one. Rumor has it he's not driving his police vehicle because he is hiding. This one has some deer antlers in it. And I think I'll take my gimbal off of my tripod. That'd probably be better. Let me just take that off. Yeah, so apparently the police chief is here. I thought he was not here. But nothing on here that would indicate this is a police chief's vehicle. I know, like, you know, there must be like no crime out here because those are some nice deer antlers in the back of that truck. Those are real deer antlers. Maybe the police chief is a deer hunter. I don't know. There's a bumper sticker back here that says Stronghold. Not really sure what that means. Let me turn that back. Yeah. This vehicle here appears to have some gas cans. Not really sure what that one's about. There is a police vehicle over here, and it is running, so I really don't know what the deal is with that. And then we got one here. This one says, I don't even know. Do y'all know what that says? Oh my gosh, my gimbal is taking a shit on me. This one has a Texas A&M. Like Texas A&M. There. No police lights on that one. Is there an officer in this one? Oh, there's no police officer in this vehicle. I wonder if the doors are closed. Doors are locked. I did check the lock on the door. Hold on. Maybe the police officer gave the police chief a ride over here. There's nobody in this vehicle. It is running, presumably wasting gas. Why would it be running? Is there a police officer somewhere around here? So I'm in the back. I'm in the back of, you know what? I'm gonna end this live stream and I'm gonna start a new one.